The two Jills, a psychologist and psychic intuitive, reveal mind-blowing insights that turn psychology, self-help, and conscious teachings on their heads. Why? Because they work. Real help, sincere growth is here. Welcome to Psyched.
Hello. Hi, Jill. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm really excited about our topic today. We talk about this a lot, you and I. It's about beliefs. And beliefs are everywhere, and they really are not getting their due. I don't think we're paying enough attention to them. And I feel like today we can sort out a little bit what they're doing and maybe, as we like to say, go beyond belief a little bit also. So it's a great topic, and I think it's a seminal topic.
I do too.
Spurred this podcast in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. Jill, are you okay if we each offer our definition of beliefs just so that everybody can understand kind of what realm we're speaking of? Is that okay?
Yes, that's a great idea. Yes.
Okay. So the way that I'm using the term beliefs is anything that you are operating as fact or truth that can't be proven. Okay. So religious beliefs obviously fit in this context for me. Love and emotions can fit in this realm. There's a huge amount of items that we account for as fact and truth in our operating systems that are unprovable and maybe worthy of deeper kind of discernment and contemplation.
Yes, I really like that. And I feel like my definition, I don't think differs from yours. I think what I focus on a lot is the operating, and you do too, but it's the operating system. We run on beliefs, and we're not fully aware of that. We think we run on logic and knowledge and truth and provability and fact. And that's not really the picture. It's really the beliefs that kind of dictate our perception, which dictate our emotions, which then dictate our actions. So they're really embedded in there, and we're not aware of, I would say, most of the things that we actually believe. And a lot of those beliefs may not even be ours.
True. Yeah. Health, things that are healthy or not healthy. Even if it's based on science is changing. I think more than we as humans want it to be, right? I think of even in our generation's lifetime, things about, eggs are healthy. Of course they're healthy. Oh, wait, not the yolks. The yolks aren't healthy. Actually, the whites aren't healthy and the yolks have more nutritional value. Okay, now we're back to eggs. So there's just constantly this evolution of fact and evolution of truth. So that compounds it. So I don't think it's possible to get out of operating amidst belief, but it's super valuable to really give yourself more space beyond your brain, to give yourself consideration and contemplation, like I was saying, about what is that belief, right? And it can be, let's see, how do I want to put this? Our beliefs and what we are operating as truth affect us in so many ways. So many ways. So if that control room of beliefs is considered off limits to you, that no, we don't get to question that. We don't get to question our, what's true in terms of faith. We don't get to question science, Jill. Well, scientists do. They're trained to, right? So this are like, no, you can't question that. That is so sad. It's so disappointing to me because there are so many ways that we can give ourselves major upgrades by just giving ourselves rooms for doubt. And I have a strategy I should probably put at the end, but I want to put it here. Is that okay?
Yeah, start with the strategy. I like it.
My system, and I love to recommend it because it works so well, is once I've slowed down my thoughts, and we'll talk about that in I think another episode, but our thoughts we operate so quickly and so in such an automated manner. But when I can slow my rhythm down enough to even notice the thoughts, my strategy is, but is that even true? Right? So I had a bug bite on my walk this morning, and I don't know what it was. Anyway, I felt this pain in the back of my leg, and I flicked it off, and then my mind started to go, well, was it this? What is that? And oh my God, should I be watching for anaphylactic shock or something? And I'm like, hold on, is that even true? Right? Is it even true that this is any serious issue? Like, yeah, let's be aware. Let's continue the walk. And if there's symptoms, we'll head back home, or we'll call one of my kids to come get me, or whatever, an emergency situation. But I think we're good, right? I continued on with my multiple mile walk, and I was fine. But anyway, I had to doubt myself. And that isn't a pattern a lot of people have in place.
Yeah, I think it goes against what the brain is actually trying to do, right? The brain is looking for answers. The brain is a beautiful streamlining system, right? That is trying to drill down and get very specific. And once it lands there, it calls it comfort, and it calls it truth. And it says, stay here. We're good here. So that creates unwittingly this inflexibility to move off of that comfort zone, right? Knowing something is a comfort zone, and we're not that discerning on what comfort zone, what landing pad we choose a lot of times. And many of them, like I said before, are kind of just like a snowball going through your life, picking up beliefs all over the place from a random, snippet. This is how advertising works. Advertising literally knows how to implant a belief into your system, whether it's a healthy food or drink milk or who knows, and so we're not doing a good job of updating that system. And to your point, you've said this, it's like this autopilot. When we create these belief systems, it forms a literal operating system of how it interfaces in the world. And these beliefs just keep dictating our actions, which means we are not present. So if present's a rough word, we're not discerning, we're not choosing, we're allowing the same reaction we had yesterday based on this belief to go again today. And that's what the autopilot is. That's why we feel so stuck sometimes, and how things, the same shit, different day idea. It's a very repetitive program up there, systems of programs that we have, right?
Beautiful. What you were just talking about there regarding the way that the brain can look for automation, because the brain is trying to do a lot of different things. And I think our temperaments dictate in some ways, or we are dictated by the way that our brains automate. I know some people that their brain is very much, no, I've already worked through that. I don't want to work through that again. So the brain is trying to make it efficient. It's trying to save time. It's trying to save energy. Yeah. So in those systems, that's a system of not fragility. Well, I guess it can cause fragility, but it's a system of inflexibility for sure, right?
Yeah.
So I actually enjoy, and I think you and I are both really good at doing this. Yeah. We can notice and observe in another person what their underlying beliefs are, right?
Yes.
There's somebody that I love listening to his podcast, and he definitely operates from a framework, a belief of his favorite people are those that work really hard and sweat and, really have had to sacrifice a lot of time and have had to work hard to get where they are. And I'm not opposed to that, but what about the natural kind of giftedness and flow that we have in things? Are those also not admirable and interesting, right? That didn't have to involve sacrifice and toil and trouble.
I agree. I think the brain, though, does like complicated problems. It does like to gnaw on problems. It does. We do hold here, a high regard and value for suffering, that you get to where you want to go through suffering. And you and I talk about this a lot, how it's really a Judeo-Christian credo, right? That we're here to constantly better ourselves by flagellating ourselves a lot of times, because that's the way you get to where you want to go. And I reject that model. I 100% reject that suffering creates greatness, that suffering is the path to greatness. We are all.
It can, but it doesn't have to.
It
doesn't have to. You and I have both traveled in cultures and areas of the world that are predominantly Muslim. I would say it's not just Judeo-Christian, Jill.
True.
I would add that there's atheists that I'm friends with and have in my audience that are very much of that belief. There's Muslim friends and such that I have that are also of this. So that belief is even beyond religion. It's just a belief, and it does fit within those, though, obviously, in the Judeo-Christian story.
I mean, that's a broad, because it's broad, but you're 100% correct. Look, my husband talks about it in the job, when my kids are just starting out in internships and they're getting people coffee and they're paying their dues. And I'm like, my thing is, if you start out paying your dues, you will never stop paying your dues, because people don't understand how tricky and sticky these programs are. If the brain sort of allows this program to run, it always runs. And I have a client who I'm working with, and she, is now becoming a CEO of a company. And my thinking at the time was, don't use this. You reached the top. Don't use this now to say, well, I'm new in the job and I have to please the board and I have to please other people. And you never arrive, is what I'm saying. That there is a program, even if you are the top of the business, there can still run the program of, there's more suffering to be done. There's more dues to be paid. There's more people pleasing to be, meted out here. You're still putting yourself below something, which is a huge issue.
That in terms of enjoyment, right? Because and that's such a great example. Thank you for bringing it up. In her case, it's a woman, yes? Mm-hmm. In her case, when does she get to enjoy the fruits of her labor and all of the success that she has allowed, created, experienced, right? Yeah. So yes, and it's not that there's anything wrong with paying your dues. It's the way that the brain tricks someone into pretending that, oh yeah, I know exactly how this goes because I'm paying my dues. And that's not a guaranteed success either. There is no guarantee for success. There is no formula for success. But a lot of people's brains, especially those that are striving for, especially career success or financial success, et cetera, their brains are part of the system of tricking and deceiving themselves into oversimplifying something that is very complicated. And in some ways, there's a degree of luck involved. And that's a belief system that some people they do not want to believe in luck because they have no control over it.
Yeah. I love luck. I think luck is everywhere, but we're not paying attention to it. It's sort of like, I think everybody's blessed. It's the same idea to me. That we're all blessed. It's just what your brain, again, because of its programming and belief system, chooses to look at. It's glass half full, glass half empty, right? I mean, you have to know that about yourself. But these beliefs are insidious, they're really, they're hard. And that's why I think you and I are so good at what we do, is because we can see it. And in some ways, the best way to see your beliefs is look at your behavior. Look at what you're actually doing. Forget about what you're thinking for a second and how you justified that behavior. Just look at it without the story behind it. Are you yelling at your kids? Are you being an animal at work, and justifying that behavior? Start looking at just your actions, not other people's actions, your actions. And then you take out the layer of, yeah, but I'm doing this because, which makes it okay. You take that out. And then you can start to, like you were saying before, slow things down a little bit and be discerning and kind of ask, what belief is causing me to behave like that? Right? Mm-hmm. And typically they're fear-based, right? If we're misbehaving, there's a fear-based belief there. But beliefs are not just fear-based, but if we're misbehaving, it is. So that's a hack that
I like that. That's beautiful, because there's a lot of belief that is revealed once we ask ourselves why.
Yeah.
So your system works really, really well. Why am I doing that? Right. And I love that. Not why am I thinking that? Why am I doing that? Why? Allowing yourself the freedom to examine your actions and why you are doing certain things a certain way, especially in areas of your life where you're feeling that there is some sort of missed potential or missed opportunity, or it's not fun, or it feels harder than it needs to be. It probably is harder than it needs to be. Your statement about the brain really enjoying hard problems, I'm not convinced that everybody's like that, but those of us with strong brains, our brains are literal masters at overcomplicating things and at the same time oversimplifying things. So it's a really interesting paradox. But maybe it is the brain saying, this is so complicated, but I've simplified it for you. It's like the brain saying that to the human. I've already simplified this for you because you can't handle it. So just don't go there anymore. I've already figured this out for you.
Cliff notes. You get the cliff notes. You don't even know the whole story that's behind it, right?
Yes. And then when you layer on top of that, the way that your beliefs create these automatic impressions of other people, right? This podcaster that I was talking about, I can tell his favorite people are other people that work really hard or get up at 4 a.m. to get their reps and their gym time in, or, they've suffered in this way or they suffer in that way and they've done really hard things and really suffered because of it. I think those are his favorite people. And again, I get it. There's nothing wrong with it. There is a hero's journey kind of archetype in that. But I love the idea that humans are naturally fantastic. We're naturally glorious at things that didn't require years of effort, that didn't require, years in a cave of, self-awareness and, whatever trips or, I'm trying to think of all these cliche type terms that didn't require any of that. You just showed up great in that way. And when you get out of your own way from your brain, because that type of natural greatness operates beyond your brain, beyond your training, right? So the brain regularly, and we talk about this in the brain episode, doesn't want to look at what it didn't help you with. So if you're naturally great at compassion, understanding, patience, identifying problems, problem solving, singing, whatever, the brain's like, I didn't help with that. That clearly isn't as important as these other things that I helped you.
And we do allow the brain to suck the air out of that balloon. A lot of times things happen above us, in the higher layers of ourselves, and then we bring it back down to brain to analyze that stuff. And so a lot of our great ideas and our inspirations, that when they get funneled through the brain, they just were like, why did I think that was a good idea? Why did I think that was ever going to happen? There's a lot of poo-pooing that happens if we don't realize it's not a bad idea, right? If you have an inspiration, I'm going to say never a bad idea, right? But the brain can make anything onerous, difficult, and why bother, right? It can really take the wind out of our sails. And that's another thing to just kind of look out for. It's not a filter for your godliness. It's not a good filter for that.
It's so good. This is one of the many reasons I'm so glad we're doing this podcast, is because both of us have a unique yet really useful and novel approach to how we look at the functioning of the brain and how it can help us be our best self or get in the way of us being a better version of ourselves. On the topic of beyond beliefs, one controversial point I'll offer is that all beliefs, although many of them treated as sacred and as irrefutable, they're all human-made. And that doesn't mean they weren't divinely inspired. But under the topic of beyond beliefs, all of them are worthy of some, contemplation and discernment. And is that even true, right? There's a lot of stories that go along with these bringers of these, these beliefs and how they were entered into humanity and how they were offered in this world. And there's I think a healthy amount of suspicion that can go in those, but within those, especially the religious belief systems, we are there's pain involved for individuals that doubt those stories and therefore doubt the beliefs, right? Because there's a whole chain of dominoes there that happens once you start making more human any individual that was involved in bringing about those beliefs or seeding those beliefs or receiving through, and I'm not trying to diminish beliefs. I'm saying that when we can give ourselves more permission to discern our beliefs and more consciously choose our beliefs, it helps us be a better version of ourselves, and it helps us avoid manipulation and suppression of that greatness that we were talking about.
That is perfectly said, honestly. There is so much, I think, self-suppression going on because of the fear of questioning things, the fear of being ostracized for your questions. There's a fear of being wrong. And, the beliefs in a lot of ways, beliefs create our identity. We are a patchwork system of what we believe. That's why they're so, fixed in a lot of ways. It's because we identify with them and we identify as ourselves through them. And that's problematic, and if we're not willing to sort of throw all the balls up in the air and just choose the ones that we want, we're going to end up, I have a lot of people say to me all the time, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I just did that. There's a belief that you could look at. If you took the time to look at it, that's a really good on-ramp. You should know why you did that because you're going to do it again. Right? That system keeps running until we stop it. Nobody else is stopping that runaway train, if in fact it is a runaway train. And it affects our relationships. So true. And this is a story. We are going to do a parenting thing, but this is such a good example that my son we were fighting every day about math when he was in middle school. And one day I understood that I could either keep fighting about math or have a relationship with my son. But those two things were not happening together. And I had to make a choice. One of them had to go. Oddly, a lot of people don't see that choice. And they keep kind of pushing ahead with the math because there's a belief there. At least what I saw was, if he doesn't have the math, it's a compounding problem. It's going to last a long time. He's going to be behind forever. It was a future-focused situation. But I was sacrificing the present and my relationship with him. But then I started to ask, do I believe all those things? Do I believe he can't succeed without doing well in math? Do I believe that this is that important? Like, where did that come from? Right? And it came from when I was young, super young, right? I was never good at math myself. And so I just was like, I don't think I believe that. I don't think math is what I thought it was. And I chose to have a relationship with my son. I never spoke about math again. He just transferred to a really good school. He's doing great, but I never bothered with it. And if I didn't take the time to really look at, I could have one or the other. And why is this belief literally sabotaging? I'm allowing this belief to sabotage the relationship with my son.
Beautiful, Jill. What a perfect example. And I'll offer, because the audience probably doesn't know, we're talking about college. He got into a great college. So this is, from the past to the present, because it's almost like if I were to recharacterize what you said there, it was like, are you going to believe in math or are you going to believe in your son?
Yeah.
Right. And it gives me chills just thinking about it that way, that it doesn't feel like that choice in the moment, but that's our point. Exactly. These types of beliefs don't feel like a choice. They feel like, no, you don't have a choice here. You have to make sure he's good at something that at least in those years, or the way it was being taught, he's not good at this. Right. And we don't have to be.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said it so perfectly. There's that wholeness piece that I thought he wouldn't be okay without math. right? That speaks against what we were talking about before, is that we are amazing. Math doesn't make us amazing, right? And so this value even of what we do with education and all that, there's a place for it. Okay, there's a place for it. But it is not the be all end all. And what you know is beyond your education, right? It's beyond.
It's complicated, right? And for those that are, to stay on this topic of math, those that are naturally good at math or somehow they get the right teacher or the right professor in college, it's like, wait, what did you just say? I had an economics professor use talk about the first derivative in mathematics and that, well, it's just the slope, it's the rate of change. I'm like, wait, what did you just say? I mean, I was good enough in math to get into a really advanced level of math my freshman year of college. And it was that junior year that I was like, how did I never know? Why did I never get, or why didn't anyone ever tell me that really the first derivative in an equation is literally just the rate of change. It's just the slope. And I was like, oh my God. What else did I miss? What else could have been easier? Had it been not overcomplicated and actually explained in a way that made sense versus just the mechanical steps of mathematics. Anyway, oh my gosh.
Because as we were thinking about, doing this podcast today, I was like, are all actions from beliefs? Beliefs can only create a reaction, right? It can only be a repetition. It can't be new, right? Do you see it that way? Or is that... So
try me another way, Joe. Let's see.
Beliefs, I see them as programmed, right? They're sort of canned. They got in there somehow. And just to our point, it doesn't matter how the belief got in there. But once we have a belief, it becomes a thought, an emotion, and action. They all come together. And that action can't be action. It can only be reaction, right? Because it's something that we already know, and we operate under that rubric. And so we're not doing anything new if we're operating from a pre-existing belief.
I like that. That's fair, because there's no room for creativity there, right? If it's a belief system that is dictating the thoughts, right? Because beliefs have a really interesting way of doing that. I believe this, so this is true, right? There's just this immediacy of thoughts, responses, actions, etc. And there isn't any original sort of contemplation of, oh, I want to try it this way or want to try it that way. There's very little liberated, actions that come from that. That's totally fair.
So it does,
I like that.
So it does, in a certain way, make beliefs limiting. Beliefs limit us. They don't have to.
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
But if you're not conscious of what you believe, then I would propose you're working from limitation.
That's good. And this fits perfectly with what you're talking about here, because the other disadvantage of a lot of belief systems is that they make the person not believe in themselves. They're supposed to believe in this bigger system that's beyond them at the expense of believing in themselves, their potential, their opportunities, their, I would say, inherent greatness or inherent giftedness, or just what they're inherently good at, that some other people aren't, right? So that is automatically suppressive if you really take it to its,
so it's almost like
logical conclusion.
There's a way to be here, and it's almost like the boxed, you get your box delivered to your door every day, and that's the way you operate, right? So we just take in all these beliefs that are given to us by our enculturation, our domestication, or whatever you call it, right? We just take that all in, and that becomes the box, the operating system. But there is another option here, right? Is look at that box, and everybody talks about getting outside the box, but they don't realize the box is their belief systems, right? And And so we can operate that way, or we can say, I know what my beliefs, and this I do a lot. Like, I know what my brain is saying to do right now. I know what my brain is saying this is. I know what my brain is saying how to behave. And then I'm not going to do any of that. That's the way you step off the ride. And so as an example, and I hope I didn't give this example at another time, but it's a good one either way, and it's coming again. So there's a time my son is able to really push ahead. When he wants something, he's able to just drill down and weaken me, right? So he got on a call one day with me, and something he said started to spark this reaction in me. And I was like, you know what? I know what's going to happen here. I've been here before. I'm going to yell at him. We're going to get into a fight. It's not going to go well. So in that moment, I had enough of the slowdown, of the pause, to be present in that moment. And I said to my son, you know what? You just said something. It definitely hit a nerve, and I'm going to get off the phone and we'll table this for a minute. We'll talk about it later. The minute I did something different, which was step away from that belief that I was right and I had to teach him a lesson and I had to, whatever I had to do at that moment, which was an autopilot reactive response, the minute I decided I'm not going to do that, everything that I was, the whole body, because I was riled and I was like, yeah, but everything just dissipated. It literally disappeared. There was no, I have to call him back now that I'm calm and teach him a lesson. It almost like the whole problem just disappeared. Nothing needed to be done. And I think we're overcompensating in a lot of ways for our belief systems, which means I have to fix the mistake that I made because of my belief system. And then we go and apologize for what we did. Like there's just this constant making a mess and fixing a mess. But the mess is coming from the belief system.
So good.
Right? Not the other person. It's coming from you. And it can be changed right here. They don't need to change at all. Not at all.
That's so good. I love this. And I sense some people will be confused maybe a little bit that we're using the term beliefs in this context, because they keep thinking of beliefs in a faith-based context. But I love that we're using it in this way, because and I welcome anyone to look up the definition of belief. It doesn't have to be faith-based. And when you look at it in this more general way, then you're going to have even more tools to really re-examine difficult relationships or difficult situations in your life, and give yourself more freedom and more creativity to re-examine you in that moment, because we are more than our beliefs. Right? And for so many individuals, they are just, so much of their identity is based on these things that they feel are fixed and unchangeable. And again, this is not, I was not raised in a religious household, right? We didn't go to church every Sunday. I didn't have any, book being jammed on my, my throat, or, like, remember this, Jill. I didn't have that, right? And yet there's always opportunities throughout our years, throughout our lives, to be operating unknowingly these non-factual ideas that shape and frame so much of what we do and so much of who and what we are, right? You've given great examples, and I'm trying to come up with a good one. They don't feel as good as yours, but I guess I'll do this. I tried, and I think beliefs are something you should try on and experiment, and really test. It is an experiment on, is this allowing me to be a better me, right? Because ideally, since all beliefs are human made, I don't want to say made up, because I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but we make up good ideas too, right? Again, there are divinely inspired ideas in my belief system. Anyway, so if they're all made up, then pick a good one, right? So I was trying on the belief system that your thoughts create your reality, right? That's a very popular one in personal development, and, fits in the law of attraction. I didn't study the law of attraction, but I I was kind of curious, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Your thoughts create your reality. Okay. So definitely you want to be positive. And then we were on a private charter sailing vessel in Puerto Vallarta on vacation. My parents were there, Jeff and I were there, and our daughters were probably like 8 and 11 at that point. And we're out looking for dolphins. That was our quest. The guys operating the boat knew that. So we were just out in the wild, probably 8 miles off the shore, looking for dolphins. And we came upon a huge pod, and the only ones that wanted to jump in and be with the dolphins were my 8-year-old and I. So we got on our life jackets and jumped in, or she already had hers on. Anyway, I got one on too, just because it was cold. Anyway, we jumped in, and she, this kind of wavy, we're quite a ways out there. And I kind of see her little head, her little 8-year-old head kind of bobbing up a little bit going, Mommy, are there sharks out here? It was so good. And I was just like, and then I ran right into that belief system of, okay, she just thought about sharks. And now she has invited me in to think about sharks. So if we're thinking about sharks, are we going to bring sharks into the situation? This didn't sound fun. And I was like, they could be, but I feel safe. Do you feel safe? And we're always in the water, right? And she goes, yeah, I feel safe.
Yeah, that's
and I said,
amazing.
Good, let's see if we can see those dolphins.
Well,
It was it was so liberating. It was like, and I never thought about your thoughts. It's not that your thoughts don't affect you, but the idea that they create your reality, I think is a really, really sad idea that misleads a lot of people.
The reason that I say thoughts create your reality is because when you understand how the brain works, right? You set the brain, you decide what the brain takes in. So if you have a preconception about something, you unknowingly are setting your brain to look for confirmation of what you already believe, right? That's why beliefs can be so limiting and so, why people can't see to the right or left. It's because the brain can't take in or won't take in non-confirming data. And so in that way, what you believe is true for you. And everything out there, because you've, limited your perception, it gets validated. So in that way, so it's not like it creates your reality, but it reinforces what you already believe to be reality, what you already believe to be true. That's what the issue is for me. So there is an element of truth to it, but again, it got taken off in the wrong direction where we've become afraid of our thoughts. I mean, this is a huge problem for psychologists, right? That whatever going on up here is unknown to us and scary and out of our control, right?
Uncontrollable.
So it's a huge problem that stems from what you're saying. Our thoughts create our reality. This isn't reality. This is an ancillary problem that idea kind of creates, is that fear thought. It's crazy. It's a crazy idea.
Versus, I think if I had the opportunity to rewrite the line as an editor, almost like, instead of our thoughts create our reality, your thoughts are affecting your experience with your reality. And you have a choice in that matter, right? So I wasn't limited in that moment, but I did notice it. And then I creatively, right, offered another experience to myself and to her. In a respectful, liberated way, right? Getting mad at Georgia for thinking about sharks in the ocean, that didn't even cross my mind. Like, no, Georgia, don't say that. Take it back quick. That just would have been ridiculous, right? The other place that I see the belief system is about justice, right? So a belief system about justice or karma. In my work, I do come across individuals that have had really unfortunate, tragic things happen to them, experiences that they've had, and they're trying to make sense of it. And they're trying to, I find a lot of individuals go belief hunting, belief shopping in those situations because their present beliefs aren't helping them. They recognize that, they're trying to find another one. But again, a lot of these really well orchestrated belief systems, I don't think they're badly intended. I just think that we deserve better than what a lot of them are offering. And that's why I want to give individuals more of their own authority over, like, is that serving me? Is that helping me be a better version of me? And is it helping me bring out the best in other people?
I spent a lot of time early on in this doing exactly that. Like, if I caught a limitation in the belief, I don't want to say caught it, I looked for the limitation in the belief, right? Because once I knew there was a limitation in it, I was willing to let it go. Because I think, to your point, you only choose the ones that serve you. So even if there's I believe, I used to ask parents a lot of times when I was working with their children who had anxiety, etc., I would say, do you believe your child can heal? Because I really understood that if they don't believe this child could heal, they wouldn't see the progress, which would not keep them in therapy. Right? So I needed to know, and then I would have to work with the parent to figure out where that came from, why they hold it, why they're holding on so tightly to it, because that's their kid. Right? How much more limiting can that be? But it was going to tie my hands, and it was going to prevent, even if the daughter made a change, they wouldn't see it. Right? And a lot of times the kids come to us, they're like, you always want me to do this, but you're not seeing everything else I'm doing. Because they're only looking at one thing. And again, I know I'm going on the parenting thing. I have a lot of examples of parenting, but
yeah. Well, that'll be a theme definitely in this whole podcast, because it's such a big part, how we were parented and how those of us that are parents are parenting.
So look for the limitation.
It's affected by all of this.
Definitely look for the limitation, because that should tell you right there, it's for the trash bin. Right? Anything that puts you down. Yeah,
that's good. So that was a good strategy. Yep. And then I guess another strategy I'd offer to people is, where is my authority in this, right? If there's something you feel compelled to do that you don't like yourself while you're doing that, or even while you're thinking that, this is, I think I would offer that people do, slow down their thoughts and examine your own thoughts. And then if you ask yourself, where is my authority in this, right? I know a lot of, they call themselves recovering Catholics, that they have there's a lot of guilt and shame and repression and suppression of definitely, God's glory and I do believe in God. That I'll not use that term. I've tried other terms. I didn't like them as well, but I do believe in a higher power. And I work with atheists all the time that are friends and clients, and because I am not attached any version of greatness. I don't care what you think it is from. It doesn't matter to me what you call it, but their thoughts, there's no room for, what if that's not true? There's no authority there. There's no creativity there. The other strategy that I know works really well, Joe, when I'm sort of examining discovering my own a limiting belief or a limiting idea, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I have my own story about why I didn't do that. It's fine. Anyway, very comfortable arguing and looking for logic and pointing out flaws in logic and all those things. So I put my own thoughts that I'm a little bit curious about. They're not that strong, not that logical. I put my thoughts on the witness stand. That's my visual. I know. Talk about overcomplicating, but there's a method to this. there's an outcome to this. If I can ask my thoughts these questions, like, but is that even true? Right? How do we know that's true? What if it isn't true? Right? There's a whole range of freedom beyond that belief that happens there. And I enjoy that process. I feel more freedom and less limitation from either bad ideas or ideas that at one point felt great, but now all of a sudden it's like, maybe this isn't such a great idea. And maybe it never was, or it was for a while, but it isn't anymore.
I think a lot of this stuff, not all of it, but it served us once. It was beneficial once. We don't have a lot of sovereignty when we're young, right? So we kind of just have to please the people around us, adopt their views, whatever, just to get by, right? That's a strategy. But there does have to come a point, or hopefully there does come a point in life where you could say, that was then, this is now, update this data bank, really just question all of your thinking and ask yourself to your, like you're saying, is this my belief? Where did this come from? That came from my teacher in 3rd grade. Why am I still holding on to that? Even if it's a view about yourself, right? Like a lot of people are holding on to versions of themselves that is like, if they were overweight when they were young, they still feel like that as an older person. It's so incredible, how these things just don't get cleared out of the data bank. And we've made them, the reason why they don't get cleared out, sadly, is because we've made them into identities, which makes them sort of characterological. It doesn't make them just like, whoops, that got in there when I was 7, time to sweep the floor, right? And you and I think, both have this, it's not that we're not compassionate, but these things are not emotional. Cleaning out your computer is not an emotional experience, right? If you have something in there that's not working, you get rid of it. It couldn't be more logical and less emotional, right? And so sometimes, and more self-loving. And so sometimes when people say to me, Jill, it's just not that easy. I'm like, there's a whole belief system that's operating, that's dictating that. I'm saying jump the rail and just come over here. You could always jump back, but just jump here for a minute and try this out, right? Because when I realized, that there was nothing wrong with me, I mean, that was a day, right? And when I work with people, and I know you do this too, it's, if they come to me, whatever they say, that they have anxiety or they have depression or they say, I'm anxious and I'm depressed. And I'm like, no. You're fine. You have a thought system that's operating an anxious program or a depressed program. That has nothing to do with you. I mean, 0. Right? So we create this kind of separation. And then when you can separate from it, you can work with it, right? Because it's now no longer a part of you. It's now something that's over there. And I'm like, oh, look at the depression. It's not mine, but I see it. And there can be so much more objectivity around it when it's not your core identity, right?
Identity. Yeah. Oh, Jill, it's so good. Because at the end of the day, at the beginning and the middle of the day, we are the operator of our beliefs. We are not our beliefs. And whatever we are operating is such a great control knob. It's a wonderful source of and entry point for feeling free from limiting beliefs and suppressive beliefs and suppressive ideology, giving you more room to explore and experiment with other ways you could also be, right? But they are in there. So I guess that would be another strategy I'd offer people is, for the example of the ex-Catholic, those ideas are in there and they may never go away, right? So don't ask them to, right? They're going to be in there. And that just because they're in there doesn't have to mean that's a problem, right? Because you can add new ideas. You can experiment with new beliefs of who and what you are, and that you are more even than an ex-Catholic, right? So then any sort of self-limitation that you feel, or, oh, it's harder for me because, whatever, that's a great statement for everyone to write down. It's harder for me because, right? And whatever is there, then you can ask yourself, is that even true? Is that even, and do you want it to be true? I'll say this in front of my family all the time. Is that even true? And do I want that to be true? And they kind of look at me like, oh my God, what is she doing now? You know what I mean? But then I'm giving myself space in my own energy field for rumination, right? Of, you know what I mean?
The space
let me play with this a little bit, right?
The space is the hardest thing to, by space, we mean, we know there's a program there. Yeah. I'm going to pause it for a minute, right? And create this opening where nothing's filling it. No automatic response, thought, emotion, action is filling the space. And when you do that, something new can happen. And I do say a lot of times that even just that pause starts the reprogramming, because the original program does not have that pause in it. So even just inserting a pause is rewriting the program, and you won't know how it gets rewritten, but you'll see it pop up. You'll just see it pop up. You're like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's different. It's magical, right? I mean, it's exciting. It's interesting. And we are denying ourselves a lot of that, by really staying in the lanes, of these belief systems. There's no reason to not play here with your beliefs. Beliefs are always just your best guess or someone else's best guess. They're there to be updatable. I don't know how they ever got so fixed. I don't know how it doesn't matter at all.
In a way, it doesn't matter. In a way, it doesn't matter how we got here, right? Because to me, that's just I don't think it is as important to understand how we got to where we are. And we talk about this in another episode about memories and the fallibility of human memory and all these things, and what a trail to nowhere that can be. We don't need to know how we got here. But if you can understand your choices from where you are, and that they are wider than your current operating system, your current beliefs are offering you, then you can get beyond the brain and beyond the beliefs into a wider range of view where you can start demonstrating and utilizing more of your authority, more of your creativity, and all of that. But because we don't have authority over other people. We have authority over ourselves,
and I think the reason,
more so than we've probably been realizing.
Drill down the point of what you're saying. The reason we don't realize that we have it is because the beliefs are in the way, right? So we don't realize that we have authority because we don't have a belief that we have authority, right? That doesn't exist. So in a lot of times, we end up overcompensating for our beliefs with bravado, with, pendulum swinging the other way. I did this before and I'm going to do this now. And then you're going to swing back because you've never really examined the belief. You're just flip-flopping within it, right? So it is important to not go right to the sovereignty piece, right? Without doing the work of figuring out what's keeping you from being sovereign, because you can't impose sovereignty over this system we're talking about. Like that's
limiting beliefs.
Who doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. Yeah, that's good. Related to, let me see about this here. So to be clear, I feel like we're both saying that humanity would be better off and humans would be better off if we gave ourselves more authority to re-examine beliefs that are in the context of any religious, science, self-identity, other sorts of like, this is true and I can't question that automatically is anything you can't question, or that you've been operating as true without ever doubting or thinking about it for yourself, especially as an adult. That's what we're talking about. That's what's on the table. That's what's on the table. And it may sound overwhelming to people. This is a beginning of a process, right? And again, the first thing I'd remind you of is you are not your beliefs, right? Because there's a ton of uncertainty and maybe anxiety that comes up for people of, wait, she's saying like, none of it's true. It's all made up. It just causes this panic. Wait, You are the operator of those beliefs. You've been operating all the time. It's just that you've been operating those beliefs. You can operate any belief. You can operate any idea. You can believe that God loves everyone. You can believe that science is fallible. You can believe that the most beautiful, fun-loving person you've ever known also has a side to them that's shady and shitty. You can also believe that someone you would never take seriously because they're a bad person, they're a bad guy, they're a bad woman, that they actually have a good side. And there's probably somebody in the world that loves them and knows that good side. And maybe you haven't seen it or somebody else hasn't seen it. You see what I'm saying? There's so many versions of this that can be helpful because it requires energy to make someone into something they're not, including you, right? The energy of, well, that's the bad guy. I have to remember they're the bad guy. Yes, they're the bad guy. It requires energy to maintain a story that needs, how do I want to put this? When there is something that doesn't have merit on its own, it requires the human to operate it, right? So it's like busily kind of consuming and making this energy to make that true. Think about this in relationships where there is somebody that the two are they're just not a good match. But there's all of this belief system of, but no, they love me. And remember when they did this or when they said that. So there's a lot of energy being consumed trying to create this story that person loves them and in a healthy way and that you should stay together, right? When it doesn't matter in a way if you think someone loves you, if they make you feel shitty about yourself, or if they're holding you back, or you're letting them hold you back. I don't know how you want to put that, but there's a lot of dissection there. But if love is an excuse for staying with somebody that you wouldn't pick today,
what it does to us, because our beliefs often have us twisting ourselves into a pretzel because we don't realize it's the belief that's operating there. And so we just, without understanding the system, we think something's wrong with us and I have to eat a lot of crow or suck up a lot of stuff, right? We don't realize we could just oust the belief system that's holding that in place, but instead we contort ourselves. And our beliefs do, I mean, a pretty giant portion of them. I would go out on a limb more than you would and being like, I'm going to say 99.9% of them make us feel not great about ourselves. I think it's really that high because I think the other stuff that you're talking about are not beliefs. I think those are beliefs that we use to serve us, but in a weird way, they're there to take up space. We don't really need them. We don't really need the good beliefs if we get rid of the garbage. Because when everything else falls away, when all the garbage that we think we are, people think they're going to disintegrate if we start ripping their identity and their beliefs apart. But in truth, only the outer shell cracks, and what's left without all that is you. You're left. It's all this other stuff that's not you that you've been calling you, which takes so much energy, as you've just said, to maintain, right? If you have a belief that you're not a great person, you're going to spend your whole time trying to be great to people. It's exhausting, right? You never get to choose. Like, I don't really like that person, but I don't want him to think I'm not nice. I'm a nice person. Yeah. And we go and we do strange things to people who don't deserve it, frankly.
Yeah.
And so we're maintaining this image of ourselves, which is a belief about ourselves, which is exhausting and depleting us. And it is standing directly in the way of our sovereignty, which just means I get to choose. I get to actually say what I want rather than just the scraps that were kind of given to me.
Yeah. I thought of another example. There, and this is not related to children or parenting, and so it may be more relatable to some people. I had horrible childhood asthma when I was a kid. We lived in Minnesota, and thank God the Mayo Clinic was closed. So I think I actually did get like really top quality care for how to operate amidst asthma. And then my family moved to Idaho when I was 13, with one of the main reasons being it's dry here, because the doctor was suspecting that the humidity was part of the issue. So we would travel out here and kind of like experiment and be like, okay, yeah, Jill, how you doing over there? Did you need your inhaler today? That kind of stuff. And we're like, okay, checks that box. Anyway, my family moved when I was 13. And I had 13 years of having this whole like, okay, Jill, in PE class, we're going to run today. So you just get to sit there because no one wanted me to have an asthma attack, right? So yeah, I skied, but that was winter. Everything that exacerbated my asthma in the winter was dead. It was dormant in the winter in Minnesota. So it wasn't that I wasn't active. It wasn't that I was, but I was just not a physically, I don't have the sports kind of background in my life. And I was, I think 18, I think I was still in high school. I may have already graduated from high school. And all of a sudden I was like, I just wanted to join a gym. I wanted to do yoga. I wanted to, try these other things. Why I wouldn't have thought I could do yoga. It's just silly. But anyway, I didn't like yoga. That's not for me. It's not my thing. Pilates is good. Yoga I don't like. Anyway, but I ended up over the course of the next 9 years where I could do I could actually do 2 spinning classes in a row and like working my ass off. My cardiovascular system's so happy about the opportunity. But I had a belief in my head of things I couldn't do because of whatever, right? And they weren't wrong. They were right at the time, but they weren't true anymore. But I wanted, and I did. I didn't need to, but I chose to re-examine what I'm capable of in my bodysuit.
Awesome. That is awesome.
And it still feels amazing.
No, it's not. It's perfect.
Right? It seems like such a silly example, but what are you capable of that you don't even realize?
We're not saying everybody's, should have known this, right? This is not common knowledge or understanding. We hope we're offering something to you that is liberating and flexible and new, right? And certainly not in the realm of, you mean you didn't know this? Like Jill and I are amazed, right? That a lot of times we're talking about things that, yes, they're very simple and they seem super obvious, but they're not, right? There's something there that if you just do the words, if you just listen to the words, you're like, I know what a belief is. I know what this is. I know what that is. And the brain can be very dismissive of it. But this is simple and subtle and in a weird way under your brain's radar, right? Because the brain is not looking at itself. We're asking you to look at what the brain is doing. Open it up, look under the hood. Let's start paying attention. Nobody does this in this disconnected, just conversational way. These things may happen in therapy, but that's a dicey situation sometimes, this is not about anybody doing anything wrong, right? This is just really about, there's another layer here that people probably don't understand that is responsible for 100% of your behavior. Right? 99.9% of your behavior, unless you're waking up and saying, like I did with my son, like, wait, I know where this is going to go. This isn't going to go well. So unless you're actively jumping ship, you're working from these systems, this software that just gets in there. And like Jill says, we don't care how it got in there. We just deal with the belief as it presents. And we're like, do you want it? Do you not want it? Let's get rid of it. What do we do? Right? It's pretty cash. Pretty cash.
Yes. I love how you said that. And yeah, that's good because I think, and we talk about this in another episode, the brain wants to be right. So this whole topic of being beyond your beliefs can be threatening to the brain of, wait a minute, are we going to find out we were wrong about really big things? It's not about that. It's not about like I love that you introduced the idea of blame here. This isn't about blame. This isn't about fault. This isn't about not being smart or being smart. It isn't about that.
Yes.
Who cares who was wrong about it if you have a better right?
So the takeaway is, look, beliefs are what you believe is true for you. Doesn't make it true, but it's true for you. And that is malleable. That can change. And it's fun when it changes. It feels like Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever. It feels like a holiday, right? It just feels so, it presents physically, right? I mean, you feel it. There is just a weightlessness to it, right? An unburdening in a way.
It's beautiful. And it can be disorienting. I'm not going to lie. It takes just some practice to reconsider that you aren't your beliefs, right? You are the operator of your beliefs. That alone can be very calming and soothing to the parts of self that might be highly disoriented or confused by even the process of re-examining your beliefs. This is a very unconventional approach that you and I are offering, Jill. I think that's one of the reasons I hope where people find the benefit in this. Right. And I love that you mention to people, if they're like, there's nothing new here, then you're not listening.
That's the perception piece. Okay. Your brain
I promise you, then you're not listening.
In a box that already, your box that already exists, but it's over here. That's what we have to.
If your brain is the type that wants to validate that it has everything correct, it is not looking for anything new. Okay. So if anyone didn't hear anything new here, I encourage you to do the opposite of what you did. If you watch the video, then listen to the podcast. If you listen to the podcast, then watch the video, right? But by re-experiencing something that is designed to be novel and liberating of you being your best you want to pay attention. And you're probably going to hear a new thing every time you listen. That happens all the time with my work. And Jill, I know it does with you too.
Get in touch with us. I think, at a certain point, we will tell people how to get in touch with us and be able to, add. We're ready? Okay. So tell people how they can talk to us.
Oh, we're ready. Jill, we're ready. Yes. Okay. So, So just go to, and we're cheeky intentionally here, psyched.wtf. Yes. Psyched.wtf. And check it out. That's where you can interact with both of us. You can meet other people that are enjoying this experience and enjoying the materials here in the literal liberating and getting psyched about the you that you can be and have permission to be and the full authority.
Thank you.
Oh, I also want to add, I almost forgot. I'm not good at this on the other stuff that I do. So I'll be all cheerleadery here. If you enjoy this experience, could you find 2 people to share it with? Could you provide a rating? Could you hit like on it? Those things help other people find us. We are late in the podcast starting phase. There's a lot of podcasts out there right now, and we are promoters of what works. So if you feel like this worked in helping you maybe re-examine yourself in another way, etc., thank you for helping us out.